I'll be damned. The Celtics finally made a move in the offseason, other than trading their number one pick down to number 3. And they did, in fact, acquire free agent Gordon Hayward from the Utah Jazz. Bobby Gaines here again, and I figured if I talked about the Celtics getting Al Horford, I couldn't not talk about them getting Gordon Hayward, who is, let's face it, a much better player, or at least a better player. It's kind of hard to tell right now. It's too soon to see exactly what he will be with the Celtics. But just the fact that they got a player that I've heard of is always remarkable, even with them improving every year. This is still a big step for a team that, was the number one seed last year somehow, but he still doesn't quite have the talent to compete with the Cleveland Cavaliers. But even so, this is a huge get for them. And it's one that I had heard about pretty much all last season was how, they were going to get a max contract for Gordon Hayward. They were going to sign him. They were going to get him from the Jazz. And, I don't want to say it was a foregone conclusion, but it was something that seemed pretty likely, at least for a while. But then, seeing the Celtics swing and miss at Butler and George, and again, I don't know how much they were in on them, but just seeing how little they were doing in the offseason, I wasn't very optimistic that they were going to get Hayward. I knew that they would bring him in to look at him and give him a meeting, but I didn't realize they would get him. I didn't think they would. And I also didn't realize how big the connection was between Brad Stevens and Hayward. Now, I know Stevens was his coach at Butler, but I didn't realize and I don't know if that was the deciding factor, but it was a factor. And again, in Hayward's statement that he was leaving the Jazz, he mentioned unfinished business with him and Stevens as far as winning a championship. And again, only time will tell just how this will work with Hayward and the Celtics if he will be part of the next championship team for the Celtics. He signed a 4-year deal, 3 years with a player option. So again, he could bolt in a few years, you don't know, but in those few years, will the Celtics see the NBA Finals? Again, another question that, you would think so, but you never really know what's going to happen. The Celtics have been trending way upward the last few years, and this is another step in that direction. And, now comes kind of the awkward part. Not awkward, but just kind of, the price of signing a high-price free agent now. The Celtics will have to trade, some of their core group. Your Jay Crowder, Avery Bradley, or Marcus Smart. I think Avery Bradley's the most likely to be traded, even though I don't necessarily think they should, but just because it doesn't seem likely that they'll sign him next year, so they may as well get something for him. Again, I don't know what they're going to get for these players. I think they're just trading them to make salary cap room, so I don't know that they're going to be trading them to get another established player, because then that would be more salary. So I don't know. I don't really want to see them give these players away for just second-round draft picks, but I guess to get Gordon Hayward, that's what they would have to do. It's funny, when you have Jay Crowder and, Terry Rozier, et cetera, they're not good players. They're not good players. They're not championship players, but you do get attached to them. Watching Marcus Smart and all them the last few years kind of just be the little engine that could. And, now you finally get a good player, a good NBA player in Gordon Hayward, and you're like, yes, you got a good player. But now you got to get rid of, a couple of those guys. You got to get rid of your depth in a way and, pick up cheaper players, I guess. And that's kind of where Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum fit in, being rookies still. And this will be a big opportunity for them if they do, in fact, trade Crowder or Bradley or, a combination of role players on their team. Jason Tatum will have to maybe contribute more than we originally thought. And Jaylen Brown, see what he has, because right now the jury's still out on him. I wasn't really high on drafting him. You can see my draft reaction from last year when the Celtics drafted Jaylen Brown. I really hadn't heard of him. Not that I'm a draft expert, but I didn't think it was a smart pick at number 3. I thought it was a reach. But, he was decent this season for a rookie. He had some pretty good moments in the playoffs, actually. But then again, so did a lot of the Celtics. The Celtics are a weird team. Outside of Isaiah Thomas and sometimes Al Horford, not everybody shows up every game. You had Amir Johnson, Gerald Green, Kelly Olynyk, Marcus Smart. Any given day, they could go off for a bunch of points and be great defensively, and then the next game, they're nothing, and they're on the bench for most of the game. So you don't know what you're going to get for any of them. And now with Gordon Hayward, you have another player where, you know what you're going to get out of him. You're going to get about 20 points a game, decent number of rebounds. I don't know how he is on defense. I know he's a good shooter. But I think this is a great move for the Celtics. It means that Isaiah Thomas doesn't have to be the scorer every night. He can dish it off to Gordon Hayward or maybe even Horford if he's having a good night. So this kind of opens things up a little more. I'm not going to say it makes the Celtics, formidable enough to deal with Cleveland, but they were already decent enough to win 50 games, so I think they could do that again. And, if Cleveland kind of takes the second half of the season off again, you could have a situation where the Celtics get home court advantage throughout the playoffs, How far that gets them, I don't really know. But you know what? I'm tired of analyzing it. I'm glad the Celtics got somebody really good this time. I'm glad that, they're adding a significant piece. I'm not going to say he's like the end-all, be-all, but Gordon Hayward is a really good piece to a team that was already pretty good. And I've kind of scoffed at the whole rebuilding process since the beginning. It's gone pretty well, I'm happy to say, and Gordon Hayward is the next step in that. Obviously, the big move would have been to get Paul George and Hayward together. That didn't work out. I don't know if it's because the Celtics didn't offer enough, or maybe Indiana just wasn't going to trade him to the Eastern Conference. I've heard that rumor as well. Because what they got for Paul George, I don't think was enough. I mean, Victor Oladipo's a decent player, but he's he's not really... I don't want to say he's up there in age because he's still pretty young, but he's not exactly somebody who's going to bring you over the top. I mean, he didn't bring the Magic or the Thunder over the top, and I don't think he's going to do much in Indiana without any backup. So you acquired a pretty decent player for George, but Celtics could have given them a few draft picks and maybe even Bradley or Crowder or somebody. But again, in a way, I'm kind of glad they didn't do it because who knew if the Celtics would have had Paul George past this season. So we can't, dwell on the deals they didn't do, but we can talk about the deals they did do. And I was very pleasantly surprised to hear that the Celtics got Gordon Hayward. Look forward to hearing your reactions as we get ready for another exciting basketball season. And who knows, there could be more transactions before the beginning of the season. Go Celtics.